Welcome everyone to the next edition of the Care Home PR and Marketing Podcast. My name is Adam James of Spring Up PR, and today I am delighted to have Simon Crowther. He is MD of Tamar Healthcare, which is a home care company based in Plymouth. And Simon is also founder of Care Skills Consultancy. So what Simon will be sharing with us today is how to acquire a home care company and to continue its growth or accelerate its growth. In this case, Simon, case 36% continued growth. So it's a great episode. Now, before I introduce Simon properly, as I say, my name is Adam James of Spring Up PR. We help aspirational care providers get more inquiries via PR and digital marketing methods in order to, as I say, get more inquiries or recruit dream care teams. And if you would like a free video on the 7 vital and proven PR and marketing things you must be doing in order to get more inquiries, particularly from self-funders, please head over to springup-pr.com, and there you will see a section where you can get a copy of that free video. Great. Without any further ado, as they say, let's get into the episode. And Simon, welcome.
Hi there, Adam. How are you doing?
I'm all right, thanks, Simon. Why don't you start off by introducing yourself and explaining who you are and what you do?
Yeah, my name is Simon Crowther. I'm the founder of Care Skill Consulting. That's a consultancy company that operates any service at all that is registered with either CQC, Ofsted, or their Welsh or Scots equivalents. And we undertake mock CQC inspections, turnarounds. We help investors. We do due diligence, anything at all to do with the care sector. I've worked in the care sector for 22 years, started in 2020 when I packed my job in and started a home care business. And from 2020 to 2000 to 2004, I grew that from a startup to 7 branches of home care, doing about 12,000 hours a week, and 2 nursing homes. We had about 94 beds across 2 sites. Then I exited. We sold out, exited the market. And since then, I've been running training companies and consultancy within the care sector. And then about 3 years ago, really, I decided that I wanted to get back in to be a provider and started looking around. Then COVID hit. I wasn't about to buy a business in the middle of COVID. It was a pretty difficult time for everybody involved.
Sure.
So I waited until that had gone and started the process of acquiring and becoming a provider again. Only this time I didn't start from scratch like I did last time. I bought a going concern. So that was the first aim. And the aim is to have multiple branches throughout the area that we operate in.
Terrific. And what we're going to focus on today is acquiring a healthcare company and, as we say, continuing its growth. So we're going to be focusing on the story, if that's all right, Samuel, on Tamar Healthcare. So tell me about you're thinking of acquiring a home care company. What are the kind of, where does it all start and how do you start looking?
All depends on basically from how much money you've got and how much experience you've got. So
Yeah.
I'll just go through my story about what I did.
Sure.
I've got experience in the sector and I've got experience of growing and exiting. So I had quite a significant bit of experience. And so I knew what I was looking for. I didn't want to start from scratch, which is an option I'll come on to later. I wanted to acquire a business, but I'm also limited by budget. So I was looking for a business that my budget was around about £500,000. That's what we could afford. There's myself and business partner as an investor. That's the kind of amount we could afford. And we were looking for something which had a management structure in place, had a good rating from CQC, had a really good reputation locally, and most importantly, had a good feeling about it. Everything, I wasn't really bothered about too much else. I do a lot of things, or probably don't do things, that other people would need to do in the way of due diligence, simply because I run a consultancy and I've got enough resources to pretty much fix anything that I find. So once we got those criteria, which are pretty much the same for everybody, you know, what your budget is, what you're looking for.
Yeah.
We then started trying to find out which businesses were for sale. And that sourcing took a number of different routes. There are brokers out there who sell home care businesses, and everybody who's looking to sell or looking to buy will be aware of those because you get constantly inundated by them. So you've got the brokers, you sign up to those, they start bringing stuff into it to you. I also approached people directly. So I targeted utilizing CQC databases, utilizing business. I subscribe to various business intelligence databases. I subscribe to a platform called Endo, which is all UK businesses. businesses of any type. So you can find out, roughly, you can start looking at the balance sheets and you can kind of look at the history of them and you can kind of work out the size. So using that, I kind of narrowed things down. And this took months of prep, narrowed that down, and then started writing letters to people. So we were writing letters to people. I was contacting people who I know from my own network. I was putting it out across my own. I mean, this is where I'm slightly different from a lot of other people, is because of my care consultancy. I have a presence on social media anyway, with a lot of healthcare and social care contacts within that domain, both on LinkedIn and on Facebook. So I could push out information saying I'm interested in this. And I got a lot of people, inbound inquiries from there. So it was almost like a marketing, you do marketing, it's for care providers. It's almost like that in reverse. I'm marketing the fact that I want to purchase something. Instead of trying to sell somebody, I'm trying to buy something. So it was a mix. And I was looking nationwide. I'm based in Manchester, but I was looking, because people often ask me, why did you buy a business in Plymouth when you live in Manchester, 350 miles away? Simply because as you go along and as you look at the businesses which fit your criteria, you get a pipeline of inquiries. So we had about 10 businesses we were looking at. And then as you start to look at these businesses and converse with the owners, because most of these are, well, in fact, they're all owner operated, you start finding things that don't quite work. You can't agree on a price. They're overvalued. Things aren't quite what they seem. The sellers are kind of being a bit slow in responding. And eventually you start narrowing it down, just like any kind of sales or marketing pipeline. You start narrowing it down, and eventually the one we bought, the one in Plymouth, was one that crossed the line. That's the reason. Yes, it would have been a lot easier if it was nearer to me rather than all that time away, but it didn't really matter. We were looking nationally anyway. Well, England, I say nationally. We weren't Scotland or Wales. It was just England we were looking at because I understand CQC regulations. So that's the one that crossed the line.
Yeah.
Now, sorry. No, I was just saying that.
In this case, it was a home care company who
Yeah.
was doing well already. There wasn't a turnaround was required.
No, absolutely not. We do turnarounds as part of CareSkill. That's bread and butter stuff. We do that.
Yeah.
But to do a turnaround costs a lot of money.
Yeah.
A huge amount of money to do a turnaround.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to spend. I wanted to spend the money, but not in that way. I wanted to spend the money in quality assets. So I wanted to buy something that had a good rating from CQC, so that I didn't have to concentrate on trying to solve problems. I could concentrate on growing the business.
Yeah.
And I could concentrate on getting the seed ready to then develop the next one, where I can then buy the next one or acquire the next one. Right. So the next one that I buy, I'll be happy to do a turnaround because I've now got a really good team at the one in Plymouth.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to start from scratch, or just for that first one, I wanted a good quality business that was well managed with good people on board. That was absolutely vital.
Yeah. And when you, for those who may be looking to acquire, what's the kind of, let's say, red flags that maybe you've been accustomed to?
I think, again, I'm a little bit different from most, is the fact I've got the experience. So I'll take on a little bit more risk, not much, not that there was any in Tamar really, but I will take. Now, the issue that we had is having the management structure in place. So the care market in England is very fragmented. If you look at the top 20 care providers who've got multi-million pound, 20, 30 million pound turnover businesses and more, they only actually account for about 20% of the market. 80% of the market is made up of small providers. Many are owner operated, where the owner is the registered manager. And this is where it gets difficult. If the owner's the registered manager and they're selling you the business, they leave and you haven't got a registered manager. So how do you, unless you are actually going to step in and take over that business and start becoming the registered manager yourself? And I wasn't interested in that. I didn't want to go out and buy myself a job. I wanted to buy a business that I could work as a director and be strategic on, that had a management structure in place. And that's why some of the businesses fell by the wayside. So you've got to have a look at and think, they're selling this business, but if the owner who is leaving the business does a huge amount of the work, if they are out doing visits, if they are doing the quality assurance, if they're the registered manager, if they've got all these functions, what are you actually buying? Because if that person goes, you've got to backfill that.
Now,
if you have to backfill that with other people and other recruits, that's going to cost you money. And quite often that's not taken into consideration. This is where now you get into where it's quite difficult, is especially through brokers. Brokers will look at the finances and they'll tell the vendor or the potential vendor a price, and that vendor gets that price in the head, and that's what they want. What they don't realize is once they've gone, I've got to backfill there, and an owner might be taking out dividends, they might be taking out a wage, they might be taking out all extra things throughout the business. They're probably also working twice as hard as other people and doing twice as many hours, which means if an owner goes, quite often I've got to replace it with two people.
Yes.
So suddenly I've got to find a registered manager and perhaps a deputy as well, or maybe a finance person to replace that owner, and that's got to come off the price. And that's where you've got to, if you're thinking of buying a business, you've got to really think about, what does that owner do? What do they do, and what do I have to replace them with? And if I do replace them, what am I actually buying? Am I not starting a business from scratch again?
Yeah, I
You know,
see.
now
And I can
if
imagine some people have fallen down on that.
definitely, I've seen that in my clients and my consulting clients, where people who have decided to buy a business, the owner's gone, and they just don't have the knowledge to
Have
run a
the
care business.
knowledge and skills. Yeah,
It's
yeah.
they've got the desire, they've got the heart, and this is the difference. If you start, I started from scratch. So when I first started in 2000, I started with no clients, so I learned client by client. I didn't suddenly have 30, 40, 50 clients with all the
Yeah,
problems and all the
yeah,
problems of staff. I
yeah.
learned little by little, just
Mm, mm.
starting from scratch, and learned the hard way. Whereas if you're buying it, it's got to have that management structure in place, and that's what was important for me. Even
Yeah.
somebody who knows what they're doing, I needed that management structure in place, and this did have it. It had, although it was owner operated, it still had a management structure in place.
I see. So in Tamar's case, what happens? It was acquired and the manager was there in place
Yeah,
already,
there was a deputy manager in place who
right?
was already getting built up and trained up to be the registered manager. So
Right. I see.
actually, what I was more interested in, I went down to meet that deputy manager, and that was my deciding. I thought, has this person? It was almost like a job interview.
Yeah.
I was happy to buy the business if I thought that person was the
Was
right
going
person
to
for the
say.
job, and
Yeah.
they were. I was really impressed with them. So
Right. I see.
that's what kind of pushed it across the line.
I see
Whereas
what
some of the others
Mm.
that were nearer my home would have been easier to get to. They had a deputy manager that the broker said, oh, they got the deputy. But actually, when
Yeah.
I went in, that deputy hadn't been trained up. It was basically somebody who was given the title in order to sell the business. It was a
Yeah.
senior carer who'd suddenly been given a promotion, but hadn't been invested in, hadn't had a training program, hadn't been developed, and it was too much of a risk. They just got the title, so they think they could sell the business, and they weren't the right person for the job. Whereas the one that we took on was because the people in it struck me as ones who actually had the ability to do it, and all I had to do then was provide mentoring, training, and investment and time into that team.
Yeah, I see. So let's move on to valuation, EBITDA, net profit, and how to value a home care
I mean,
company. What have you learned?
you learn that brokers in particular will tell vendors their business is worth a fortune. It's a bit like, because they need to have them on the books and they'll overvalue, and they won't take into account all the things I've just previously been
Just
taking. They
mentioned,
just go
yeah.
off the numbers. So if you just go off the numbers, generally, how much something's worth is how long is a piece of string. It's worth what somebody will buy, will pay for it. But in general, you're getting anything from 3 to 4 multiple of what they call EBITDA, that's earnings before interest, depreciation, and amortization. What that means is basically your net profit with any add backs. So if you've got any loans, you take those out. You've got any, if the owner's taking the car out of it, or they've got any of these, you add all these add backs of things.
Yeah.
And you end up with this figure called EBITDA. It's a bit of a nebulous figure, but it's what pricings are based on.
Yeah.
Think of it as profit. It's not quite. It's profit plus a little bit back. And it's usually a single branch that is registered with CQC that has a management structure in place will get from between 3 and 4 times EBITDA. So if you're making 100,000 a year EBITDA, 100,000 pounds EBITDA, it's worth 300,000, maybe between 3 and 400,000. That's what you'll sell it at.
Yeah.
If you've got multiple branches and you're getting bigger and it's got a bigger management structure, and if you've got 2 or 3 or 4 branches in different towns with different local authorities, the multiples actually start creeping up. So you can then get 5 times EBITDA, 6 times EBITDA. And I've heard of quite big regional ones that are taken out by, that are bought by the huge national companies or venture capitalists, where they buy out something with 20, 30 branches, getting 8, 9 times EBITDA or more. So as you build up a chain, you're actually increasing the value of your business without you don't have to increase the size of it. You don't have to grow it any higher. You just, by having another branch, you can push the multiple up. But if I'm buying a single branch, or selling a single branch, it tends to work at about 3 or 4, let's say 3.5 times EBITDA. Open up another one, you might get it to 4.5 times EBITDA. Open 3 branches, you're pushing that valuation up. So a lot of people, I tell my clients, is if you want to think about an exiting, you need to put an exit plan in place, because you have to know what your buyer is wanting, i.e. people like me, and then you structure your business so that it's got everything that buyer wants.
Attractive to them.
They've got a management team in place. It's got systems in place. It's automated as much as possible. Your quality assurance systems are on the ball. Everything's done really well. You've got low staff turnover. You're making it as attractive as possible for a buyer to come along and make it easy for that buyer to buy. And that's the irony, is the bigger you get, the multiples go up. Your actual profit might come down because you're investing heavily in overheads, but your multiple goes up. So you actually make more money selling it with a bigger structure behind it, rather than just the profit.
Great.
I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, absolute sense. Of course it does, 100%. So with Tamar Home Care, then you won the Lang Brisson Best Home Care Provider. You reduced staff turnover. I'm giving you sings and praises here, Simon. You have maintained a good overall in your CQC. 36% increase in service users and increased the gross profit. So what did you implement to make changes or make developments and improvements at Tamar Healthcare?
Invest in the people in there. That is absolutely what I focused on. So the first thing to do is, I've had it just over 18 months now. It's coming up, it'll be 2 years in July that we've had it. Yeah. So the first 6 months, I didn't go for growth. The first 6 months was really looking at the team that we had and putting in a development plan for them. So that the assistant manager who became the registered manager, I ended up mentoring personally and giving her the skills and the confidence, and spent a long time doing that. And we're still doing that. We still do that today. But that's a year of really developing her skills, developing her confidence, developing her technical knowledge, developing her leadership ability, because that's what I spotted. She had innate leadership ability, but then had to have self-confidence that and grow with that. So it was really putting all that time, effort, and money into developing the team. There were some team members who weren't performing, so they had to be dealt with in terms of action plans to improve their performance, capability, and some people had to be shown the door. You know, that's we have very, very high set standards. The standards are communicated to everybody, but then people are given the tools to achieve those standards. So the manager's given them enough budgets to do what they want. The staff are given the training, they're given the resources. So my job is to provide the resources, which I've done, and then it's up to the team then to deliver the standards. And if they can't do that, well, you have to deal with it. And that's what we did. So we changed that culture, we changed that around. And once that team, and the thing is, I didn't get involved too much because the team has to be the registered manager's team, not my team. You know, they have to develop the relationship. They have to create the standards. And we've spent a long time doing that. And now we're at that point. And the culture crosses everything. I mean, I could talk about this you have to write a book on this probably, is the culture embeds. You can't grow, you can't grow without recruiting. You can't recruit without culture. And you've got to get that culture right. You know, I call it a fearless culture. And what I mean by fearless is the staff there's no fear about raising issues. There's no fear about coming forward with ideas. There's no fear about saying this is wrong. There's no fear about speaking truth to power. You know, we've got that culture. It takes a long time to put in place. You cannot turn this around instantly. You know, this is something that it has a clear plan, but you've got to be realistic about how long it takes. And it took us about a year, 6 months of really hard work. Then we started the growth and it just carries on going. So we implemented a Kaizen kind of continuous improvement culture, a fearless culture where people can admit their mistakes without getting in trouble. It's like, I cocked up there. You think, right, fair enough. How do we make sure it doesn't do it again? A learning culture, a feedback loop, you know, learn, act, do, say, you know, that constant feedback loop, lessons learned, all that kind of good stuff that you hear Skills to Care, you hear CQC talking about. Actually embed that in there. The other thing that we did that was a major issue is we looked at the operation, and like a lot of home care business, work had been taken on willy-nilly as the council had given it, which meant that people were driving all over the place. And like a lot of care businesses, we were limited to how we could grow because we needed car drivers. So what we did was we did this in you know, I wrote a plan with the local authority. We actually handed back about 35% of our work. Not many people will buy a business at the top end of the market, pay a premium price for it, and then hand back 30% of the work. It doesn't make any economic sense. Not in the short term. But I've done this before. So, you know, I know the market's there, as most home care providers do. The market's there, the demand is there. I knew that we could hand back 30%, redo the entire, and this was working very closely with the council. We had to get the council on board with this. Working and getting more strategic in the way that we accepted work on board. And we, instead of having people driving all over, we pulled it right in tight so that it was a very, very dense area that we covered geographically. What that did is it opened up a whole new recruitment pool to people without cars. And what we've done now over the period of a year is not only have we grown back to where we were before, we've absolutely gone beyond where we were before now. And we're just constantly growing. But in now where we used to have 80% drivers and 20% walkers, we've now got 80% walkers and about 20% drivers. And we've even got people on bicycles. We've bought a couple of e-bikes, which has helped people to take on extra visits. And we're just testing those at the moment. And it is testing because we've realized that we've bought cheap e-bikes and they keep breaking, which is a pain in the backside. But, you know, so we looked looked at it operationally. So the big things that we did, I really understood the market. So I spoke to a local authority. I understood the demand in the area, because that's really important. You've got to understand the demand in an area. I come across clients or would-be clients on the consulting side of things that get involved in an area without checking with the local authority what the demand is. You hear in the national press that there's a massive demand for social care. There is on a national level, but not necessarily in your area. Or it could be that there's a demand, but the council's run out of money, or the council haven't set up their contracting system. And if you're not on the framework, then it's pointless. I mean, you can go for the private market, obviously, but I made sure that I really understood the market, the demand locally, the demand for local authority, the demand for private, what kind of service, really understood that market, the demographics, which you can download from the Office of National Statistics. And I plot out the demographics where people live at certain ages all around the city. And we completely altered the operational delivery of care to make it tight into tight areas that we could use walkers. That helped massively with recruitment.
I see. No, makes sense. And with Tamar Healthcare, was it a concentration on local authority or self-funding?
Initially, your local authority. We're about to start the self-funding marketing. When we bought it, it was mostly private. It was mostly self-funding.
Yeah.
We've moved to local authority simply because, I mean, there's pros and cons of both. You tend to have a higher individual profit margin with self-funders and a lower profit margin with local authority.
Yeah.
However, the actual time it takes to deal and administer private funders is a lot higher, because that's lots of individual contracts, and that's individual people you've got to chase for payment, and individual people you've got to manage those individually. Whereas a local authority, the profit margins are lower, but you tend to just hand in one invoice and you get paid on time. As long as your admin's right, the money comes in. So cash flow, it helps a lot better. The market's a lot bigger for local authority. I mean, nationally, it's a 70-30 split, roughly, with 70% local authority. So you've got a far bigger pool of availability, and that helps creating runs. It helps with the work for the carers. Now we've got that, and we've got a very good relationship with the local authority. We really do work hand in glove with them. We are there to solve their problem. That's what, we are there to solve, and they have got a problem. Every local authority has a problem with social care and delivery. So I see our role as not just helping the service user, not just helping the person in receipt of our service, but also helping out the commissioners, as a wider strategic. So we've got two stakeholders here. Well, we've got more than two stakeholders. We've got the person receiving, we've got their families, we've got, the local authority, and they've all got different requirements, quite often conflicting requirements, and we have to manage that relationship. So initially it was local authority, and that's simply because the volume, and that enabled us to recruit people because we can ensure we've got work all the time. And now we're just about to start our private client marketing now.
Yeah. So in terms of moving more towards the privates, how are you going to go about that? In terms you mentioned marketing. What are you going to do?
This is where it's, a lot of care businesses don't really, I mean, you deal with this, so it's a different type of marketing completely. When you're marketing to the local authority, it's business to business marketing, and it generally involves filling a tender in, letting people know you're there. You fill a tender, you get onto a framework, and you solve the problem for the local authority. For the individual private clients, it's business to consumer marketing. Business to consumer is completely different. You have to somehow let people know you exist. Once they know you exist, make them aware of you. You've got to get them to take an interest in you. Once they've taken an interest in you, they have to then, make contact with you. Once they've made contact with you, they've got to make a buying decision. So that's a sales funnel. And you've got to set up that sales funnel. So if you just look at the awareness side, that's where your marketing and advertising comes in. So the advertising could be what you do for PR for people. If you get one of the best ways of marketing is getting into a write-up in the local press because it's free, and people look at it as unbiased kind of big spread on your local authority. I mean, it's what you do is absolutely fantastic. It's a major way of making people aware. You've got digital marketing where you're paid digital marketing, because digital marketing is split into two. Obviously, you've got paid and then you've got non-paid. So your paid digital marketing is where you're paying for Facebook adverts, paying for Google pay-per-click. Then you've got your non-paid. So your marketing is two sides: marketing and recruitment. Marketing for private payers and recruitment actually has the same processes involved. So our Facebook and our social media is really, really busy. We really pushing it. We get service users actually posting on our Facebook page talking about what we do for them, and that happens automatically now. With a bit of encouragement with people, they're just joining in the conversation. And that's one of our strong things. Our Facebook page is really strong with carers contributing, clients contributing, conversations going on, and it shows. It's a showcase of it's like a live showcase of how we are as a company. So that's important. So that's all your kind of online stuff. You've got offline stuff as well. So you've got flyer drops, you've got advertising in local papers, you've got PR stuff going out in the press. You've got, I think we've been in the Plymouth Chronicle, we've been in the Herald, we've been on the BBC. That was by accident. I'd love to take, credit for that as being a fantastic PR. That was sheer fluke. when Kelly, that was our manager, was at a recruitment event that just happened, the BBC, local
Oh, I
BBC happened
see.
to be
Right.
there.
Okay. Well, that's
Grabbed
always
hold of her and interviewed her, and she came across really well. So, that's just. But the fact is, she was aware of it, and she jumped. She made sure that she was the one that pushed herself forward, to get on it, because she clocked it. So, So there's all that.
And just while we're on that, in terms
Yep.
of the PR, how do you go about securing press coverage?
Read your videos. Honestly, I just do what you say. One thing that you said is I think I'm sure it's you that said on one of your videos that do the job for the reporter, make life easy for them.
Yeah, 100%.
So I wrote out the headline, I wrote out the pace. I'm not a writer. I use Grammarly. Stick it onto Grammarly, write out something that's half decent. Put a load of high quality photos with it and send it off to them, so they do it. So it's just like, oh, we've got a bit of space to fill, right? We'll stick that one in, and it worked.
It does. Yeah. It's a process, like all these is a process, and
Absolutely.
doing it and the process.
It's just literally that. So, I don't mind writing. I quite like writing. I'm not a professional writer, but I'm not scared of giving it a go either. I'll give it a go and I'll try, It doesn't always work, but just follow, if anybody's out there listening, follow Adam's, get on YouTube, follow Adam's videos, because it works.
All right, good. Well, that's always good to hear, Simon. So, and in terms of other, you talked about, I don't know whether you do Facebook ads or Google pay-per-click. Is that
Not yet. We will be doing, but not yet. And what I did invest in, and this is probably a little bit different than a lot of home care businesses of our size, is I took on a digital marketing apprentice. So we have a dedicated resource for digital marketing, which means that our social media campaigns are actually thought through. They are strategic, they are planned. We're actually on the first page of Google now on the natural search terms when you start looking for home care in Plymouth.
Are you telling me you beat was it homecare.co.uk? They tend to
Yes, we have on a couple of, not every search, but we have on
search. I understand. Yeah.
A couple of them. Yeah. Right. You just, the algorithms love that, fresh content. They love things that's natural. And that's what we're doing. It's natural stuff that's just going out all the time, and we're local.
And
the
algorithms like searches there are actually do audits under home care, domiciliary care at home, those keywords, those golden phrases that, with any particular region, there are hundreds of them per month. And if you can use, obviously, there's Google pay-per-click is one way, but there is, if you are able to, companies such as homecare.co.uk, they tend to monopolize it. But you think strategically, well, it sounds as though you've done.
Yeah, and it's hyper local. That's they're going for the whole of the UK. Whereas we're concentrating on literally a few postcodes. And that makes a difference. It makes a huge difference, because it ties in with our Google My Business account, which we're also very lively on. And the two link in. This is nobody really understands the Google algorithm, but the basics are Google's aim is to return a result that works for the person doing the searching. That's the whole point. So they're skewed towards businesses that prove that they are local. So our YouTube site, which is owned by Google, our Google My Business, the actual website, Google's spotting that they're all linked and that it's a real business in a real place, and that just kind of pushes you up the as well as all the other stuff. That kind of helps a little bit.
That's great. So there's going to be a concentrate. So in summary, then it sounds to me, with from what you're telling me, Simon, what you have done so well at Tamar is real concentration on that culture. I love this fearless term that you use. I might borrow that or steal it myself. Have to be, you're embedding a culture where everyone and anyone can provide feedback. They're not going to admit mistakes, because we are all making them the whole time. For continual learning, no one's going to be reproached for admitting a mistake or wanting to ask questions. And this culture is so important. And I imagine you would say, from what I understand, is all those benefits benefits, reduce staff turnover, increase gross margins, increase gross profits, ultimately more service users
That's
revolves around.
absolutely the service users. It all happens. I mean, I tend to focus. It's a people-based business. People are your natural resource. If you're making steel, you have to dig iron ore out of the ground, or you haven't got any steel. If you are building cars, you've got to buy the steel, or you haven't got any cars. If you are developing home care, you've got to have staff. You've got to have recruitment, and you've got to stop them leaving. Now, you can't really do much about pay because pay is set by the market. Everybody, no matter how they cut it, is only a few pence off each other anyway. Because the market dictates that. So what else have you got? You can't dictate. You can look at, like we did with the operations of changing it to walkers. That was one big thing that we did. Producing bikes, the culture of why people want to come and work for you. And there's two reasons you need to look at, two areas. One is, why should they work in social care? And the secondly is, if they've decided to work in social care, why should they work for you? And they're the two big things. So you've got to market social care, because I tend to focus on people that never worked in social care. And we use things called avatars. And an avatar is a typical person. And in fact, we've not fully implemented this yet, actually. It's something that we're only just beginning to. But we've got 7 avatars. And an avatar is a typical person that's got a full history about them. So we might have Mike. Mike's 52 years old. He's worked in manufacturing. He's ex-military. He's worked in manufacturing all his life. He lives in this part of the city. He has a full backstory about his wife and his kids and everything. So he becomes a real person. And we have 7 of these. And it's interesting because when you show it to anybody, and I've shown it to my clients on the consulting side, they look at it and think they can identify somebody from their business in each of the 7. Yeah. Now, the reason you do that is because you're selling a job to those people, and they've each got different reason for applying for the job, and you target the job to each avatar. So we've got another avatar, Aisha. Yeah, she's a young girl, wants to go to uni, doesn't know whether she wants to do physio or occupational therapy yet, but she's doing care work while she makes up her mind and applies for uni next year. So Mike and Aisha want 2 different things out of life. So you have to write the job adverts to answer their problem. And that's, a lot of people have a problem with job adverts. You see job adverts, care, and it's basically just a job description. It's the employer making demand. We want this. You have to have this. You have to give us this. And in return, we'll give you a blue light card or some gimmicky thing. When in fact, what you want to be saying is, we can give you this. We can give you this. So that's why you use the avatars. So in Aisha's case, it's, we can give you a route to university. We can give you time off to study. We can give you networking and extra training so you can get there. Mike, we can give you career prospects. We can make sure that you're not made redundant again, because this is you don't get made redundant in the care sector, or very, very rarely. It's recession proof. We can offer you, so you're trying to find what it is that people are looking for, and you match that to the job to the job. So you're selling the job, and that's what you're trying to do. So we might have one vacancy with 7 to 10 different adverts for that one vacancy. Different adverts, different styles of advert. The way it's written is different. All for just one vacancy.
Terrific. Well, look, this is all those listeners or watchers. There's been a wealth of information, tips, and advice. From Simon, who's doing it right now. So I hope you've taken note. Simon, is there anything that we've not covered up to now that you feel that you should add?
I mean, talking about buying businesses, we talked about my journey of buying it.
Yeah.
And the flip side of that is people selling. And if you're planning to sell, you've got to really understand what the buyer's doing. Like I said, the brokers are a bit like estate agents. Estate agents will value your house really high because they want you to come on board. 6 months later, they'll come down and say, "Oh, the market's changed. You better lower the price a bit." And they're tempering it. So there's, I think what the national statistic is, that brokers only sell about 20% of all the ones that's listed on their web. That's why also brokers charge up front for a listing, because that's where they make the money. Now, I'm doing brokers a disservice here. Not everybody's like that, but a chunk of them are. You've got to be realistic about what buyers will do. So, for example, I will not pay you 300 grand up front. If you're selling your business for 300,000 or 500,000 or $1 million, I'm not going to pay you that money on day one at all, because there's no guarantee to anything. And this is that's quite difficult for sellers to understand, is you might get some money on day one. The rest is going to be on an earn out. Yeah, it's going to be deferred. It might not be related how much of it is deferred, how much of the structure of that is down to negotiation. But what is absolutely adamant is nobody's going to give you all that money on day one. If they do, bite their hand off, because they don't know what they're doing. But any serious buyer isn't going to do that. So you've got to come to an agreement about the earn out and the deferment structure of how you're going to do that. We talked earlier on about, I bought this business. I'm going to be opening other branches. I didn't buy a turnaround. I will now. I'll happily get hold of a turnaround where if somebody's in a completely distressed state and they just want out, I'll help them. I'll turn it around and they can exit without the headache, and I'll spend the money turning it around. I'll do that now. I've got a solid team now that I can work with. We'll set up scratch. I'm just filling in a tender at the moment to open up up in another part of the Southwest where, we'll recruit a registered manager, we'll recruit a team from day one, and we'll start a branch totally from scratch without buying it, just starting it from nothing. So it's a mix of those different things. So by the end of this year, I fully expect to have 3 branches, by the end of this year. And then the year after, as my team has increased and my team knows what it's doing, I'll open up probably 4 branches. So within a couple of years, I'll have 7 or 8 branches. That's the aim. But it's all planned. It's all thought through. And everything is culture. I talk a lot about money on this, and I talk about money here, and it's, but everything comes back to the culture. And the culture of the company dictates the level of care that you give. And the level of care that you give dictates how somebody's life has improved. So one of the things we're doing at Tamar is we have a reablement ethos. The whole point is to enable people to start doing things for themselves so they can reduce the care. There's 3 kind of reasons why we do this. The first reason is it's the right thing to do. Nobody wants a care person, a care worker looking after them. People want to be independent. So we work as much as possible with the reablement ethos to enable people to start doing things better so we can actually reduce the level of care. Now that means we've delivered good care. We've made a difference to somebody's life. On a business side, it means we can advertise that. When we say we make a difference to your life, we can prove it. We can actually give figures out of how many people we've managed to reduce the care packages from because they've got better because we've done a reablement ethos. Can't do it with everybody, but that's the embedded ethos within it. The second thing is working with the local authority. If we reduce the amount of care because people have actually been reabled, that means that scarce resource of carers, we can take more work on, or replace that work that by having people reassessed and reducing the care if they're capable of doing things on their own, living their own lives, we can then use that resource to help out the council with other packages. So there's lots going on there. That's a kind of an aside that's a little bit unique to us, that we're doing things a little bit differently.
That's terrific. Simon, finally, if people want to get in touch with you, how can they best do that?
Follow me on LinkedIn. If you want advice, I post on LinkedIn every single work day between 8 and 9 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes it slips to 8:30 if I'm busy, but it's every morning I put a significant post completely free of charge, everything that I'm doing, whether it, that works. There's a phrase that I use. I've been doing this for a long time. Yeah. I didn't wake up knowing how to do this. I did that. I've got to know how to do this because I went down a lot of blind alleys. I've made the mistakes so you don't have to. There's 2 ways of learning. You either listen to somebody that's done it before or you go out and make your own mistakes. One is cheaper than the other. Making your own mistakes is expensive, but I've done it. I've spent 20 years cocking up.
Well,
So
this is why this is why what you are saying is so valuable to what.
So every day, LinkedIn, follow me on LinkedIn. That's the best way. I've got a Facebook site, the Outstanding Homecare Network, which is a Facebook group. Join that. But I'd say LinkedIn is the best because I personally write every single day what I'm doing and what seems to work, and I just post that out. Follow us on Facebook as well, Outstanding Homecare Network, LinkedIn. That's the best way.
Simon, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Cheers. Thank you.